Today we're making decorative clipboards using fabric, similar to these shown here. You'll need a plain clipboard, 2 pieces of fabric, each piece cut about 1 inch larger than your clipboard, some Mod Podge, a brush of some clear acrylic sealer as well. Make sure your fabric has been washed and dried, don't use any fabric softener, and make sure it's ironed out. Your first step is to cover your fabric with a very thin coat of Mod Podge. Make sure you've protected your work surface with either some wax paper, or I'm using parchment paper for mine. So the reason we're covering the fabric first, then that way when you cut it, it doesn't unravel as much. So a very thin coat, you're going to cover the entire fabric with this. When the whole thing's covered, you're going to actually sit it to the side to dry. Do this with your other piece too. This is my front piece of fabric and I also have a back piece. So you want to do this with both and let those dry. Okay, when the first thin coat of Mod Podge is dry, it's time to cut the fabric. What you'll do is put your clipboard on top of the fabric, and then you're going to use your rotary cutter. You want to make sure you angle it a bit so that it has a nice clean cut. So if you go straight down, you actually have some overhang. And I've already done this. I've gone around mine already. You'll want on the corners you could certainly use the rotary cutter, but I like to actually mark it with the pen, and then I'll go back and cut that with scissors. Now my clipboard had a metal piece here, so I actually wasn't able to cut all the way through, so I'll actually take it off and then I'll just use a ruler to finish cutting the straight line there. Okay, so my back piece is finished. It has the rounded corners here, as you can see. You'll want to do your front piece the same way. Now, on my piece, I have a big chunk that has metal here. I could either just take out a little piece here and then do it that way, or I can do a little bit of detail in cutting around here, and I'll probably cut around the sides here. All right, I have my 2 pieces of fabric ready to go. I'm going to do my back first. I'm going to put a thick coat of Mod Podge on the back, right onto the clipboard itself. I want to be sure to get all the way to the edges. I'm going to cover the entire board, and then we'll add the fabric next. Don't forget about protecting your work surface. I forgot to put that under right off the bat there. You'll definitely want to do that. My board is completely covered. Now what I'm going to do is take my fabric and put it right on the back. We want to make sure we keep our edges even. You may have to adjust it a couple of times. Use your hand to smooth out any of the bubbles, or you can use a ruler to do that as well. We'll get all of the air bubbles and then we'll be ready for our next step. Be sure to smooth the edges. So I think all my bubbles are out. I've pulled any of the excess around the corner to seal that a little bit better. I'm going to let that dry just a little bit, and then I'm going to work on the front side and do the same thing. I'll need to cut out a little bit around my metal piece on my clipboard, but your clipboard may be different. You may not have that on yours. We'll do that to the other side, let that dry, and then we're going to coat this in just a moment. So I finished the back, I finished the front, they're both dry. So now I'm going to go back and put another coat on top of the entire clipboard. I'm going to do one side, I'm going to let it dry, and then I'm going to do the other side. So we want to cover the entire board again. The entire board is covered. Double check your corners, make sure they're tacked down. We're going to let that dry. Then we're going to flip it over and do the same thing on the front side. Make sure you've brushed out any high spots in the Mod Podge. You want a very smooth finish on it. When it's completely dry, you may want to spray it with some sealer. If you do that, make sure you spray this outside. The fumes are quite strong. Now we have a much more attractive clipboard than what we started with. You can use 2 different fabrics like I did, or on the other one I use the same fabric on both sides.